in a small African nation of Rwanda, over the course of 100 days, on one tribe, Hutu, ran around killing another tribe, Tutsi. About 800,000 people were slaughtered. The Hutu tribe has encouraged people to kill their neighbors, classmates, co-workers, former farmers or former friends, and even some family members. They said, either you join in killing Tutsi, or you will be one who would be killed. This was not Nazi organized crime hidden behind the walls of concentration camp. This was an open manslaughter committed in broad daylight in fields, on roads, on neighborhoods, by ordinary people with machetes, clubs, and hatreds. The entire Hutsi tribe became a villain and created Rwanda a place of grave. Alex Nuber-Ruki, who spent 11 years in prison for admitting and killing 6 people, shared why he did this. Leaders of Hutu tribe have told him and others they will give him land and banana plantation, because banana plantation was a big deal in that area. In the interview, he said, I had nothing against these people that I killed, but I killed my neighbors, my close friends, and 2 of my cousins. I chopped them up with a machete and used studded club to kill some. He said, I grew up with them. I knew their family pretty well, and I was even their family handyman. They hired me to fix some stuff. He was sentenced for 11 years for killing 6 people. And this was in 1994. Why? Why did these people do this? Why was there 800,000 people dead on the streets, piled up on the roads? The only explanation journalists explored was hatred. Tutsi had better homes and better jobs. And on a Rwanda radio broadcasted day and night by their leaders, this hatred. That they have better homes and better jobs. Thus, every Hutu took a machete and killed. Sad part, this is not an isolated story. The ugliness of evil goes on day by day, even today. We need to ask this question, where is this coming from? Why do people display so much hate? Why people are so vicious? The only explanation for this evil, hatred, destruction in the world and in ourselves is deeply corrupted nature of human heart under the power of sin. Romans 8:9-20 describes the ugliness of man. Read with me, Romans 3:9-20. What then? Are we better than they? Not at all, for we have already charged that both Jews and Greeks are all under sin, as it is written, there is none righteous, not even one. There is none who understands. There is none who seeks for God. All have turned aside. Together they have become useless. There is none who does good. There is not even one. Their throat is an open grave. With their tongue they keep deceiving. The poison of asps is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their path, and the path of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. Now we know that whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be closed and all the world may be accountable to God. Because by the works of the law, no flesh will be justified in his sight. For through the law comes the knowledge of sin. We see Apostle Paul describes internal human condition, and also external human condition. And at the end, he brings the law. So look at the first one. Internal human condition. He asks this question, what then? Are we better than they? He says this because he was speaking to the Jews. The whole chapter 2 addressed to Jews who rely on the law to be right before God. In chapter 2, verse 1, he asks, why are you judging where you yourself practices the same thing? In chapter 2:17, he says, why are you calling yourself Jews? Why boast in law? You teach others, yet you don't teach yourself. In chapter 2, verse 21, he says, what does circumcision do to you when you transgress the law? In chapter 3, verse 1, he begins with a question, what advantage has the Jew? What are the benefits of circumcision? And then, now he says, what then? Are we better than they? Here he brings the contrast between the Jew and the Greek, the Gentile. The Jew had the law. The Jew had to whom God spoke. They were chosen, and they positioned themselves better. And he asked this question, are we different than they? The Greeks, the Gentiles. Are there two types of people? One are more righteous, the Jews, and one are less righteous, the Gentiles. Is human nature different based on where you are born? If you are born in a Slavic culture, you're better than you are born in American culture. Based on where we are born, are you different? Better, he refers here to be more righteous. Thus, he takes the next 11 verses to speak generally on human nature. Who are we? What are we capable of? Are we right before God? Can we do good? That's a question people ask. These are the questions he's answered. And the first one, he looks and he says this, not at all. For we have already charged that both Jews and Greeks are all under sin. We have already charged means God has already given his charge before. Both Jews and Greeks are all under sin. sin. This universal cancer of sin has affected every tribe, every nation, every human. No matter what nationality we are, no matter our language, no matter our culture, no matter where we are humans who are under sin. All under sin. Even this precious Elias. The decision of Adam and Eve, their rebellion, has placed every person who was born from them to be under sin. And he presents sin as this tyrant ruler. This evil, destructive power that dwells in each of us. You know, there's in the news, they're talking about sleeper cells. After U.S. bombed Iran, our government began talking about sleeper cells. These are the people who are from Iran, hold to the same ideology, yet they're here and nobody knows about them. But after what happened, they might start acting out and destroying America. Well, here is a sleeper cell sin. And each of us, sin sleeps. Each human that is born, you and me, born under sin. But the question is, what does it mean? How does this sin affect you and me? How does it transfer how we think, how we feel, how we desire, the relationship we have with each other? We like to think, and everybody thinks of themselves as being good, and we like to think of others that they are good. That we are in a neutral state. That we are born good. John Locke published a paper in 1960, or 1990, titled as Essay Concerning Human Understanding, that shaped how psychology viewed human nature. He argued in this paper that each person was born as a blank slate. Humans are born without any pre-built mental content. That everything we know, think, or become is shaped entirely by our experience and environment. That is to say, that person is born neutral, without sin. Parents look at their children and say, "Oh, look at her. She is so innocent. Oh, look at my child. He is so innocent." And then this child grows up and says things and does things, and people and parents are like, "Oh my gosh, where have that come from? I did not teach them. Who taught them? Where did this come from? I did not teach them to lie, they lie. I didn't teach them to be angry, they angry. Who taught my child to do that?" The Bible says it was sin. Sin that dwells in them from Adam and Eve. All under sin means that sin has penetrated every aspect of who we are. How we think, how we feel, how we build relationships, how we plan, how we talk, how we move. In order to defend this, Apostle Paul goes to the scripture and says, "As
it is written. He goes to the Old Testament and brings out from the Old Testament teaching. This is not his theory. This is not just his observation. This is the Word of God describing what sin does to you and me. First, Paul addresses our condition before God, our ability to be righteous before God. If you took the pamphlet today, in that pamphlet there's an outline you could follow if it helps you. First is our ability to be right before God. There in the Bible verses, there is none righteous, not even one. Righteous speaks of being right before God. A person who lives up to God's high standard of being upright and just. A person who is righteous before God. And he says there's no person who is right before God. Every person is guilty. People say, I have not done anything wrong. You have sin that dwells in you. And God doesn't look according to our standard of what we have done anything wrong, but also what we have not done what is right. Because I was born a sinner. The second, he says, our ability to understand the truth, a person's mind. And he says, there is none who understands. Understand speaks of a person's ability to perceive in the context of hearing and accepting what they heard. This is talking about the spiritual truth. Similar, Jesus used this in their context. Mark 6:52. He says, for they had not gained any insight from the insight of loves, but their heart was hardened. They have no ability to transfer the truth. Mark 7:18, and he said to them, are you so lacking in understanding? This is the word. Do you not understand that whatever goes on into the man from outside cannot defile him? This is talking about personal, natural state. The fact that he could hear, and his eyes are blinking, and his tongue is speaking, doesn't mean he understands the truth from God. On the level of grasping something that challenges one thinking and practice. Similar idea, Apostle writes in 1 Corinthians 2:14. He says, 1 Corinthians 2:14, but a natural man does not accept the things of the Spirit of God, for they are foolishness to him, and he cannot understand them because they are spiritually appraised. He doesn't have a system that understands the spiritual talk. This is Mac versus Windows. He doesn't have a system that processes the spiritual truth. In practical matter, we might look at somebody and say, why don't you understand? Why don't you believe? We are frustrated sometimes. Why don't you understand? The reason is because of sin. Third deals in a matter when we search for God, our desire to seek God. And he says, there is none who seeks for God. This speaks of searching, examining, investigating. In the person's natural state, he does not seek after God, even though Apostle Paul in Acts 17:27 says that they would see God if perhaps they might grope for him and find him. Though he is not far from each one of us, he says, and generally, God is near. Everybody could seek. Here he says, sin has corrupted person's desire. That's why people naturally don't want to go to church. None of the kids say, oh, yeah, I want to go to church and I want to listen to the truth. None of the kids say that. They say, yeah, I want to go to the church because I want to see my friend. We're going to play a game. Teenagers are a perfect example of a sinful man because they haven't got to a place where they could control their emotions, but they display sin on display. Adults are better on hiding things. Especially when we lie, we could say it with a straight face. Kids, teenagers, they're perfect example to display the sinner. The sad part, over time, they just learn how to hide it over time. And our natural human state, no one seeks for God. Fourth, he talks about our path, our direction in life. All have turned aside. This speaks of direction. He was going straight, right? But no, his path is aside. He needs to go this direction, yet the person goes this direction. Naturally, person is inclined to sin. You know, it doesn't take a lot of effort to get into drugs. You know, it doesn't take a lot of effort to drink. Nobody's sitting there and they're asking him, if you won't drink, I'm going to punish you. No, people drink because it is part of their nature. People are inclined. They lean towards sin. You know, last week we talked about at the couple retreat how people marry with excitement. You know, and they're standing here, their face are glowing, they're smiling. It only takes a couple of years to not see that smile anymore. What happened? Unmet expectations, resentment, because they are living with another sinner. They themselves are sinners, so they just sin against each other. And it's no longer excitement to be next to a person who's yelling. It's no longer excitement to be next to a person who's selfish, who's angry. It's no longer exciting to be next to a person who's greedy. Naturally, we don't do the right things. You don't just put two people together and say, go do the right things. No. The right things need to be instructed. We incline to sin. Fifth, he talks about our worthiness, our value before God. Together they have become useless. That goes against self-esteem. Self-esteem says, no, you're worth a lot. He addresses our worthiness here. The value we have in us. Sin has robbed value. Young person, full of energy. It could be a lady. It could be a young man. And they become the path of sin. And young, and you could see them under the bridge, devalue. They could have family, kids. They could have a good work, but they're sitting there shooting themselves up. Devalue. like a dead fish that no longer swims up the river and is no longer useful food, or a bird that cannot fly, that has no longer contribution to the nature. Sin robs every value from creation. We are created in the image of God. But sin destroys everything. 6, he speaks about our ability to do good, our works towards others. And here he says, there is none who does good. I mean, Paul, you're making a mistake. At least say some. But you're saying none. Good in the sense of upright. We're able to do something good to others. People say, well, I'm doing good. Well, let's look at the motivation. Ego, selfish, centric, driven heart. Behind every good act, sin camouflage itself in pride and desire to be praised. Somebody told me that I was looking for a scholarship. And we wrote to Elon Musk. Here we want a scholarship. And Elon Musk responds, what do I get in response? People don't just do good. It is hidden by sin. If no one appreciates it, will we still do good, like Val said? We hear this all the time. Well, I do good. I do look good for the Lord. I do look good for the church. I do good for the community. Well, the fact is, he says none. And look, he's talking about every human being except Christ. He's talking about every human nature. All under sin means none righteous, not even one. None who understands. Verse 11, none who seeks for God. Verse 12, all have turned aside. Verse 12, together they have become useless. Verse 12, none who does good. I mean, Paul is writing in such a way that you can't argue with this. It's so clear that you can't say, well, we can be righteous. We do understand. We seek God. We are on the right path. We are worthy. We do good. But he says none. No, Scripture says in such a way that it describes every human being born after Adam and Eve. And not Jesus Christ? Because the Bible says that there was no sin in Jesus. The only person the Bible addresses that had no sin. He made him who knew no sin, to be sin on our behalf, 2 Corinthians 5:21. Hebrews 4:15, he, talking about Jesus, has been tempted in all things, yet without sin. The only human being is Jesus, described where sin has not taken effect. That is sad. This tyrant ruler, this story is how we think, how we move, how we live. It does not mean that all of us are running 100% to the capacity that we can, but just move the context. You in Africa during that time, how would you behave? Move the context. You in Germany during the concentration camp. Move the context. You being in different countries right now where they're fighting. Sin is like the sleeper cell waiting for the right context to express itself. It triggers by certain conditions. You put in a hard conditions and sin is expressed. Person gets angry. This is not fair. Person begins to talk. Somebody does something and we do the following. Virus, the sin virus, affected every human being. So that's internal condition. But then he talks about external condition. External human condition. How does sin express itself externally? Romans 3:13 to 18. Read with me. Their throat is an open grave. With their tongues, they keep deceiving. The poison of asps is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their path. And the path of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. He's describing human behavior. And the first thing he addresses is person's speech. How a person's speech is affected. And he describes it through like a body parts. Their throat, their tongue, their lips, their mouth, their feet. Sin by itself is not like something that you could put under a laparoscopic and imagine and study. Sin by itself is expressed by human behavior. And the first thing he says, there's nothing good that comes out of person. Their throat is an open grave. Not closed grave. Open grave. Grave speaks of a tomb, cemetery. Imagine we take a field trip right after this into a cemetery. But every grave was open. Unpleasant experience. A hunting experience. No one rejoices and plays tag and hide and seek. The person is buried. Death. Tears. Separation. Hole in our hearts, people say, that leave in our pain. Death generated associated with decay, unpleasant smell, breaking down of the body, flesh rotting. You can smell it far away. Brings destruction, especially when we're walking somewhere and we say there's a dead animal because we could smell it, even right now. Now, the Bible describes a person's throat as an open grave. I mean, he could have used a different illustration. Come on, Paul. This is too vivid. This is too nasty. Can't you say something more nicer versus an open grave? Why say something nicer when it's truly the case? We don't schedule birthday parties at cemeteries. We don't do camps at cemeteries. We don't do something nice at an open grave. Thus, sin naturally comes out as the person speaks. He addresses this as part of deception. Second, deception defines us. Their throat, or their tongues, they keep deceiving. It's a natural state. It is normal for a person to live and lie. We say the whole life is full of lie. This is how the open grave is defined, is that it is full of lies. I remember how in the media, people are saying, we need fact checkers. Remember that? We need people to have fact checkers. Well, you have one ideology, party that defines one ideology, and you have another party that defines an ideology, and whoever controls the media creates the narratives. Doesn't matter what the facts are. They put the spin, and the other party says, well, we need fact checkers to say they're wrong. And the people says, well, who's going to fact check them? The whole idea is people don't say the truth. People say what they want others to hear. It's pretty crazy how different parties divide, collaborate with media in order to bring a certain narrative. And usually they present a righteous narrative. Remember, the president's son is full of drugs, prostitutions, and he says, he is my son. But the same party accuses somebody of lying. They position themselves as being more righteous. This is a political spin. We understand that happens in the world. But nobody can be trusted. Man by nature is a liar. Sin that dwells in the person generates deception. Media lies, government lies, school lies. We lie. The human nature lies. Second, he addresses that this open grave causes pain. We hurt others with our words. Look how he describes. The poison of asps is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. And now he brings an illustration of a snake. First, he's bringing an illustration of an open grave. Now he brings an illustration of a snake, a venomous snake. Not just a snake, a venomous snake. When it bites, it kills. We understand that there's snakes that are not harmful. Yet, when we see a snake, we're all terrified. A Texas woman woke up early in the morning to use the bathroom, 4:30 something in the morning. She did not turn on the light. When she sat on a toilet, something bit her. She turned on the light, and she saw there was a snake, a rat snake. Thank God. It wasn't poisonous. She says, I had to take a picture because nobody would believe me. And he describes here people's speech as this poison sits under the lips. Asps describes a viper or cobra that when a mouth opens, it can hurt. That explains why people are so hurtful, so ugly in their speech. That explains why we hear all these words and expressions, and it hurts us because of the poison under their lips. When the mouth opens, it bites. And it bites in such a way to kill. to hurt. And it hurts so much that it breaks people. It destroys people. There's laws to restrain the speech, right? If you say publicly, you could be sued. Defamation. Often schools pay attention to this. Teenagers don't control their speech, so what they do, they could destroy another teenager's life. And they go publicly cursing, hurting. And the person who's the victim hears all this, says, I can't live with this, and it goes and commits suicide. They create language like bullies. Naturally, people speak and they bring out poison. Look, he says, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Not partial, not some, not 10%, full. Cursing is opposite of blessing. Blessing speaks of desiring good on a person. Cursing is the expressing ill will on them. Not to say God bless you, but to say you are to be cursed. To speak evil upon others. How many things we hear. Especially in these days. How many wars, conflict, strife. People say, I wish you were dead. I wish you would die. Cursing. Bitterness speaks of being cruel or hurtful. Kind of like you have this bitter taste. But here he says you speak to a person and you left with this bitter taste. You're like, I don't know what happened, but that conversation, it just left me hurtful. And he says, whose mouth is full of cursing, full in bitterness. Not some, but full. That is the effect of sin. The poison that destroyed every human nature. After the speech, he addresses our walk. Romans 3:15-18, their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their path. And the path of peace they have not known, there is no fear of God before their eyes. Here, describing feet, path, eyes. And feet here are swift to shed blood. Swift means rapid motion, quick on the feet to hurt someone. Quick to respond. On the feet to kill. This is how it happens. Someone hurts us. Someone says, what do? We're very quick on our feet to shed blood. Well, we can't shed blood because I'm going to be in the prison, but what do? I turn to my friend and I gossip and I slander. I need to pay them back. We're quick to respond and we call right away to someone. You can't believe what just happened. They just said this to me. Person's nature is quick to respond killing was legalized, half of us probably wouldn't be here, including me. You know, people verbally said they wanted me dead, but if killing was legalized, how many of us would be dead? But it's not legalized. People understand I'm going to go to jail. Will Durant wrote in his lesson from history, in the last 3,421 years of recorded history, only 268 years seen no war. I'm going to read this again. Out of 3,421 years, only 268 no wars. The rest are wars. During World War II, it estimated that it took 225,000 to kill one enemy soldier. Expense on manufacturing, doing things, all cost. And to kill one enemy person in World War II costed 225,000. To kill an enemy in Iraq and Afghanistan war, the range was from 500,000 over to 2 million. I mean, for some it's war, but for others it's business. It keeps the economy going. We gotta manufacture. It pays taxes. Just a week ago, a man hid himself on these mountains, set something on fire, and as the fireman arrived, he took his sniper and killed 2. The 3rd survived. What made him do that? All the sociologists are trying to figure this out. Why would a person do that? Sin. Sin that dwells in him. The path of a sinner describes this way: destruction and misery are in their path. And the path of peace they have not known. Destruction means, the word comes from 2 words, is to break, smash, and destroy, like kind of describing this, chaos, and path. That as the sinner lives, he leaves behind destruction. One of the terrifying moments was to be caught in a mudslide, where there's sudden rush of earth, water, debris, just goes and destroys. We saw, some of us, the videos that happened before yesterday in Texas. Never before water rose to this level. Everybody went to sleep. 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, this gush of water began to destroy 50-something people missing, 23 girls. There was a camp of 800 people. It's a destruction. Now look at the images. Look at the houses. It's a destruction. And he's using this word to point out a sinner. He says, the sinner leaves destruction. As he goes down the path, as he makes decision, as he marries, as he builds business, as he lives, he leaves behind his life destruction. And misery is what happens after destruction, devastation, brokenness, depression. And the path of peace they have not known. Which is the opposite of destruction and misery? Peace. The opposite of killing, peace. The opposite of hurting somebody with words is peace. There is no fear of God before their eyes. Because the fear of God is taught. It doesn't come naturally. This is the human behavior. This is who we are. And thank God for parents that use a rod. Thank God for the government that uses force. Thank God for certain laws that suppress the sin. Sin is to kill, hurt, shed blood. Verse 19 to 20, he says, we know that because of the law. Romans 3:19, now we know that whatever the law says. It speaks to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be closed and all the world may become accountable to God, because by the works of the law no flesh will be justified in his sight. For through the law comes knowledge of sin. We know is sin because the law. Thou shalt not kill. The law. Take away, thou shalt not kill. Killing becomes normal. The law puts every person accountable to God. If we all saw that, because the sad reality, somebody would be sitting and saying, well, I'm good. I'm going to heaven. I'm not doing anything bad. Every person is guilty. If we only understood the ugliness of the sin monster that dwells in us. How, if we let this sin come out, become destructive force in our marriages, in our work, wherever we are. If we only truly understood and grasped that if sin goes unchecked, evil rules. Doesn't matter you're a 12 years old boy or girl, or you're a 62 years old man and a woman. Sin dwells in us. It shapes how we think, how we feel, how we walk. There is nothing good in us. The villain is us. All of us are capable to rise up and do evil to full capacity. It's just the right context. That's why we need Christ. We need Christ who cleans us, saves us, redeems us, opens our eyes. Christ who saves us from what? Sin that is in us. 2 Corinthians 5:21. He made him, Christ, he's talking about here, who knew no sin, to be sin on our behalf, so that we might become the righteousness of God in him. Apart from Christ, we're no one. But if we have Christ, we're his children. receiving inheritance. Going to be in his glory. Because Christ has destroyed sin. We need Christ.